स्क्रीन शेयर की हुई है सर।
बस आप if you start बिस्मिल्लाह कर दीजिए। We are
जी, बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। अभी हमारे पास जो सेकंड सेशन के अंदर टॉक है वो वाइस चांसलर डॉक्टर सैयद हबीब बुखारी साहब की। सर इस वक्त करंटली एज ए वाइस चांसलर कोसार यूनिवर्सिटी मरी के तौर पे काम कर रहे हैं। और इस सर की इंट्रोडक्शन के लिए इनवाइटेड टॉक सर की।
recipient of the Commonwealth and Fulbright. Professor Dr. Habib Bukhari is currently serving as Professor and Vice Chancellor of Kohsar University, Murree. He received his PhD in Infection and Immunology from the University of Glasgow 2002 and completed 3 postdocs from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and University of Pennsylvania and George Mason University, USA. He is a recipient of the Commonwealth and Fulbright Fellowship. Dr. Bukhari is responsible for setting up Department of Biosciences at Kohsar University, Islamabad. Dr. Bukhari has been an affiliate faculty to GMU and visiting scientist in top-ranked universities in Asia, Europe, and USA, such as National University Singapore, Cambridge, Sanger Center, etc. He has successfully completed 7 national and international research projects and published more than 160 peer-reviewed research publications, and main focus of his research or lab is to understand the biology of clinical and environmental microbes impacting human health, livestock health, and determining their genomic diversity vis-a-vis their pathogenesis and ecological fitness for biotechnology applications in environmental and industrial purposes.
Thank you very much, Sharista and Dr. Vikas for the generous introduction. So we're basically talking, and as a follow-up what our previous speaker talked about, Dr. Imran. So the major agenda which I'll be talking here will be how to carry out a better science training and science diplomacy and strengthen our partnerships, which can help us as the universities together grow in a more prolific way, and as a nation as well as. So that's something which we will be basically talking briefly with some case studies. And so that's what basically some of the case studies I'll take, some of the examples from the other country as well, and then also what we have been doing in this country as in terms of partnerships and developing partnerships. So before that, going into details, so we all are aware of the fact that what are the different challenges which we are facing and what are the future challenges which we'll be facing. So whatever science we will do basically relevant to the problems which we are addressing, which we are facing in this country. So that's something which we have to be very focused on that area, and the partnerships are vital, for example, in addressing the climate change, food security issues, health issues, sanitation and hygiene issues, environment, energy, and so on and so forth. And apart from that, we all should also be aware of the fact that what are the existing facts in this country, what is the harsh realities, which are also being revealed by one of the survey, which shows the uncomfortable truth about the water and sanitation situation in Pakistan, food security and malnutrition situation in Pakistan, and the diseases, very basic diseases, waterborne disease such as cholera, gastro, and we've also faced this dengue, malaria, and polio is still around, Ebola, and along with that, the COVID-19 is there. So these are the different challenges we are facing. Some of the challenges, rather not all the challenges. So my basically talk will be covering these 3-4 challenges. The first thing will be obviously understanding the problem. What sort of problems are key problems which we are facing in this country, and how basically the basic science and the basic research can be strengthened in order to generate the knowledge, which is the engine of a growth of any country, and then how to connect with the rest of the world, with between ourselves, within the universities, and between the universities, developing partnerships within a country, within a province, and then moving beyond the borders. And then obviously the major area or major thrust which we feel there are a lot of gaps is a STEM education, STEM and health, STEM and arts, and linking with the society is a major gaps which we need to be filled in. And one of the focus of this forum or VC's conference will be to working on these areas together to find the solutions to address the real life challenges. So that's a major thrust which I'll be covering in this 35 minutes talk. So as I said, the things become much easier now because Dr. Imran has mentioned a lot of things earlier. So briefly, the challenges. In the context of challenges, where do we stand? And in Pakistan, you know that it's a country of over 230 million, and 40% of more than 40% are living under poverty with a $1 per day. Now that must have been gone higher after this impact of a recent floods. Now there will be a lot of impact which need to be seen after COVID and the floods. And this is the second highest population after Nigeria. The growth rate is quite high. And the poor sanitation, a lot of people are not using even the toilets. They lack the proper defecation facilities, more than 25 million earlier. Now, after the flood, this must have been gone much higher. And on top of that, the mothers who's basically whose health needs to be taken care of very, productively and very efficiently, are also facing a lot of challenges, and that also reflects how what sort of a youth we are basically getting in future as well. So and apart from that, 70% of the households still drink a bacterially contaminated water. A lot of people, a lot of children die uselessly because of this problem. 53,000 children die every year. And on top of that, 22 million people, students are out of school. Children are out of school, which is a quite high number. A lot of brain drain is happening because of that as well. And also, we've also seen the fact that about 37% of children are going with a stunted growth, wasting, and so many other challenges we're facing, where the nutrition factors are also involved in that. So countries' infrastructure at the same time is extremely inadequate in times of disasters such as pandemic, COVID, floods, and droughts. We have faced those challenges. And on top of that, the world will be also seeing a extensive growth, and 2 billion more people will be added on this planet. So we have to take care of their food as well. And that cannot be done without compromising the climate change impact. So that's something which are the major challenges which we are facing in this country and rest of the world as well. Now, there are certain facts which I wanted to narrate before I start, touching those case studies. We were the very learned people, and centuries ago, and hence were the very richest one on this planet. We were the hub of knowledge, knowledge-based economy, and we used to develop a well-planned cities and very we were very aware of the basically aware of the environment and hygiene sanitation condition, and we were growing like a knowledge-based economy. And on the top of that, there are statistics that the vibrant youth contribute about 30% of the age group lies between 15 and 19 years of age group, and 60% of the population is of the age group of 30. So there's a huge potential there, provided that we are not losing this brain drain because of an intellectual disaster, because of these out of school children, because of these malnourished children. So we have to work on them. And on top of that, there's the distribution of wealth needs to be taken care of. But globally, there is a huge disparity between haves and have-nots, and the similar scenario exists in Pakistan as well. So we have to give them an equal opportunities on various fronts. So this has to be taken care of. Now, this is the statistics. If you look at the global challenges, look at this. Now we have also seen that Pakistan is also one of the top countries in terms of a livestock and a poultry production area. But however, over the years, as I said, the population is growing like anything. So the demand for the meat and egg has been, increased extensively. The meat demand has increased 3 times, whereas the egg demand has increased 7 times. And keeping in view the population and urbanization trends, we are also facing the scarcity of the land and resources to grow and cultivate plants. So that's one of the area where the resilient crops are required. On top of that, the climate change is impacting our environment, and meltdown of the glaciers are causing frequently these floods. And then we're also seeing these frequent fire events recently, and then the extreme temperature conditions. So, and on top of that, as I said, Pakistan has not basically is one of the leading country in terms of livestock, but we have not been able to capitalize that strength in the way which we have to. Looking at the market, if you look at the halal product market, the $3 trillion US industry, and if you look at the halal meat sector, 600 billion industry. Pakistan US dollar industry, and look at the contribution of Pakistan, about 115 more $1 billion. And if you look at the health security issues in terms of vaccines, you can see that a huge market of over 20 billion US, and North America is leading in that. Now, towards that, and then you can see that, look at the one single country, Brazil has been producing this corn crop, and all the major buyer on this regard is China and Korea alone, which buys 80% from them to feed their pigs and chicken industry. So that's showing that how much extensive operations are operating in the world. And this has obviously come up with some sort of a compromise on the climate side as well. So we need to find an alternate solutions for ourselves as well. And after the pandemic of COVID-19, this is an excellent opportunity which has taught us about the global health diplomacy, where the countries like Russia and China are taking advantage of a vaccine vacuum, and this diplomacy has been very successfully being carried out and linking with the different countries, and especially this BRI initiative or a Silk Road initiative has been strongly coming up, and they're taking a lead in this regard. Now, after having making this point, now I would like to ask a question from all of you, that is a basic research is a luxury, because this is something which we consider in this country. And this is obviously, as I said earlier, that the basic science is the knowledge of synthesis of is the engine of synthesis of a knowledge on which all the applied research basically is built on, and foundation of that lies on that. And we cannot ignore that. So something which we need to work on in order to all those problems which I highlighted earlier requires strong basic knowledge foundation or a basic science foundation in this country. And this is in order to answer the fundamental questions which are prevailing in this country. Every country has their own problems, and we should have our own solutions. And for that, we should have all those research facilities and infrastructure should be in place in order to deal with those challenges. Now, however, what is required in this country, what we feel that we need to prioritize the impact of that science. Whatever science we carry out, it should have a social impact, economic impact on public policy, and it should be translated into a quality products or a patents which can help help in economic engine of this country. So the topic relevance is quite important, and increased international collaborations are quite important in order to make an impact and a quick impact for that. So I'll talk about those now. As I said earlier in the next slide, that the COVID-19 situation has, as a matter of fact, caused 180-degree shift in our relationship between different countries, government, and policy makers, and the scientific community. And it emphasizes the greater need of a cooperation between the universities, between the countries, and between the region in order to address such future challenges. So this is where the priority comes in. Now, if you look at the first case study, now I can start with the same case study of a COVID-19, how basically we have dealt with the case study and how the rest of the world dealt with the case, this problem. Now we can identify where the gaps are, where the uncertainty is, and where the information fusion is required. Now, if we look at that, early warning systems basically needs to be developed, and in order to manage the COVID-19, we have been very extensively employing the lockdown approach in order to break the chain of transmission of a disease, and our NCOC was working greatly in that regard, using the databases and checking the people who were carrying this infection and stopping them in particular area in order to stop the spread of the disease, which we call an epidemiological disease model. However, that disease model, as a matter of fact, is not being taught in the universities properly. That model is not being taught in even the medical universities properly. So that is something where we need to focus on that in terms of our strengthening our teaching capacity. So this is something which we are going to face frequently in the keeping in with the current scenario, where the climate change is basically impacting a lot in terms of triggering these infections to come around, and we have to be prepared for that. So the preparedness is vital for that. And in this regard, we have been doing applying a useful approaches, but that needs to be strengthened at a university level as well in terms of a curriculum and in terms of adopting and teaching these mathematical model of disease spread and epidemiological model at that level as well. Now, what the rest of the world was doing when we were doing an approach, applying this lockdown approach effectively, but what the rest of the world was doing, if I can show you the timeline of the events in this case study, you can see briefly that when this case was reported on the 8th of December 2019, then what happens in that a couple of months' time, you can see that the kit was available for diagnostics in various countries. China was leading in that. The sequence was available right away, and that kit was employed in the diagnostic while we were struggling in that area. And then many other capacity building was carried out in various countries, and all of the drugs were available, and then a lot of mutations were basically detected globally, and the response was extraordinary by various countries. And you can see that many unknown companies, as a matter of fact, emerged in this end. And you can say BioNTech from the Germany was a company with about 19 million the US dollar at that time. It's a billion dollars, more than 10 times. Now it's a $19 billion industry, to be honest. So it developed a consortium with the Pfizer, and it's one of the giant now. The biotech companies, as a matter of fact, at that time, grasped that opportunity and were the leaders at the moment and have been able to uh, grasp a lot of grasp the opportunity and taken a lead in this regard. So we were also able to do some sort of a work in this country with our limited resources and develop this microfluidic chip in order to detect these viruses in wastewater in particular, starting from a patient sample. We'd also started this in the wastewater as well in a simple flow microfluidic chip, which can do the work in 50 minutes, and you can approach basically based on that waste water epidemiology can lock down certain areas effectively in order to stop the movement of these affected people, individuals from one place to another place to spread the disease. And there are quite a few other groups in Pakistan which have done some work, but this has not been marketed yet. This has not been given a chance. That's something where we need to work on together in order to develop a consortia where we can, whatever work we do in the lab and can efficiently translate into the product. So that's where the entrepreneurship comes in, an area we need to work quickly in order to support each other, and the facilitation is required in all platforms so that this can be. And there are other scientists who have done some work in a vaccine area. I know some of the work has been done in a UAS platform, and that needs to be also highlighted and quickly given a chance to reach to the market or the public good as well. Now, I have a data. We do not have a data of a current pandemic, but I have a data where we see that the pandemic of 2003-4, when the SARS happened for the first time, SARS-CoV-1, it has basically impacted the economy of the globe, and the estimated cost of SARS epidemic to Asian country was about 20 billion US dollar in 2003, and it affected about 8,000 individuals and average cost of about $2 million per case. Now you can imagine, because looking at the current statistics, it is huge number. So it can impact a whole country, a whole economy, and there are certain other areas, certain other diseases which are mentioned in this chart, right from the foot and mouth diseases and BSE, avian flu and SARS, which has impacted various countries in particular. And at times it was a reason of conflict between two countries, like US and America was basically having a huge role on this mad cow disease, because they were blaming each other for transmitting this disease across the border because there were not appropriately any diagnostics tools or statistics or a data which can tell you that which one is it's coming from, either this border or the other border, and entering into this territory. And that's the area, and my fear and concern is that in the future, this is going to be something where our livestock, agriculture, and even a human health needs to be taken care of with the proper approaches, diagnostic kits and tools available in order to safeguard our economy as well. Now, looking at the current scenario of a floods. Now, this was a scenario about 2010 when my team was on the field and I was on the field in Dera Ismail Khan and covering this flood and working on a diarrheal disease in particular, gastro disease in particular. And if you look at those children with the cholera, and that's a huge, as I said earlier, the drinking water. When this happened, everything's upside down. All the facilities are washed away, and the open defecation was there. And then people were, contaminating with their water, with the fecal material from disease. And this is an outbreak of the took place, and a lot of children die because of the cholera. And then this happens in the current year, and we were in the field as well, and then detecting all these. And you look at this, people are drinking and forced to drink this dirty water, and that's something which we need to take care of. And during this time of testing time, during this, after this flood event, and now after 6 months or a year, we need to take care and work together collectively in the field. Now, but what we did in terms of a science diplomacy in 2010, along with our partner from London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and Sanger Center, and then we've been able to sequence about more than 100 genome sequences in each and every type of a strain. Like cholera was on top of the list, right from Karachi to Peshawar, from north to south, south to north, and have been able to identify the major types of the bacterial strains which are causing cholera. Now, based on that, now we have at the moment a data which can tell us that these are the major strains and there's no introduction from the outside. Now, if anything happens or these strains evolve, then we can detect that based on a single nucleotide polymorphism, single mutation, and we can tell that this is something which has happened over the years due to the natural evolutionary process rather than introduction from the outside. And based on that data, we can also work with the clinician in order to diagnose the patients and also prescribe what sort of drugs are required based on the drugs resistance patterns in these strains. And also we can develop now this based on this data a quick rapid test for detecting these pathogens in the contaminated water in order to do the surveillance as well. Now, this year we have been working on the flood operations and trying to build this latrines and toilets. We know that this is another sanitation hygiene issue. We know that the dengue is there, malaria is there, the outbreaks of diarrhea is out there, and now most of the people go out for open defecation in the early morning or the late evening, and that's the time where the dengue basically is more effective in terms of biting. So that's why we would be trying to develop in the initial stage, develop 4 latrines and going to take that project to the larger scale, and also providing nets as well in order to avoid this mosquito bite and ORS and many other medical treatments apart from the. So my team has been working, and along with the social workers and all those donations which have been given to us by the social workers and all the community, and we're thankful for them for trusting us and taking this to the field at a larger scale. Now, the next case study, if you look at as I said, the global issue, the food security, and after that flood events, this is going to be extensively aggravated. And if you look at that, where a lot of people have lost their livestock, and we've also seen that prior to that flood, there was already a disease which is called lumpy skin disease, which has basically decreased the productivity of the milk, and in terms of a meat production, a lot of livestock has been lost during that, and we have not been able to respond to that problem quickly. And then on top of that, now we are facing a flood situation. So that's something which we also need to be taken care of properly by the consortium of the universities, which has the potential to develop and use their networks to quickly reach to such places, rather than 1 or 2 institutions are working together. Rather than 1 or 2 institutions are doing this, why not to train rest of the universities in this particular area to be effectively playing a role in terms of surveillance, in terms of diagnostic and stopping the disease right there where it starts, rather than spreading all over the country and before it's too late. So it has a major contribution in our economy. So we need to work that and strengthen this area as well. And apart from that, we're also aware of the fact that the borders are not effective in terms of stopping this communicable diseases. And we also need to basically work together in order to monitor and do the effective surveillance, whether this is a disease which is causing the human problem with the human health, causing the problem of the agriculture sector or the livestock sector. So we need to have, or even the tourism place where the people are moving around, that needs to be monitored carefully in order to address these challenges in real time. And now coming to the partnerships, the next goal is obviously the second part is the partnerships, how we can basically effectively develop a partnership. Obviously, one way of developing is doing a collaborative research work together. And for that, we need to develop a collaborative research funding as well in order to enhance our research productivity. And we know that there are very limited resources within a country as well. And and how we are exploiting those resources, and apart from other resources which are available internationally, how effectively we are utilizing those resources. Now, partnership or team building is a very major area which is required to be worked between the, a lot of work is required between the universities. And we know every university have the inherent strength in terms of a human resource, in terms of infrastructure. And if once they are joined and these great and diverse minds work together, and obviously these challenges can be, addressing these challenges can be much easier and much efficient compared to when we're working individually without knowing each other's strengths. So one of the agenda will be obviously this, that we should know each other's inherent strength and play around those strengths in order to improve our basically research basis. And obviously we required for that the individual working on individual trimming and giving the proper academic environment and research environment, and a healthy environment is obviously required where universities need to work together. Now, these are the research funding opportunities, to be honest, which we are, most of us are aware of the fact and are do avail these research funding, HEC, PSF, and Pakistan Medical Research Council, Agriculture Research Council, ICT, most and institutional fundings. So these are the ones which rely on most of them. And then there are other collaborative initiative, excellent initiative by PSF, where the countries like Turkey, Sri Lanka, and China are also involved in various research grants. And HEC has also developed the Spark USA linkages, and with the British Council, Inspire Speak, and this kind of the amazing grants and give a lot of opportunities. And then this BioAsia grant. So these are the ones which most of our scientists and researchers are familiar with. But these are the areas which are lacking. These are the areas in international major grants. I hardly see any institution or a university having these research grants, which are the one with the major scientific diplomacy engine and linking between the countries in order to solve the common challenges like IFS, UNESCO, TWAS, WHO, SARC, IDB, NSF, NIH, Bill and Melinda Gates Grant Challenge, One Health, Step Peer, Newton Grant from the UK, Swedish South Asian Studies, European Union, Wellcome Trust, MRC, BBSRC, JICA, and UKRI ANSU. So these are the major grants basically which are available to the scientists and researchers, and we need to basically capitalize and work on around these grants in a common interest, in an area of a common interest. And this will also help us in linking ourselves with the rest of the world and develop our scientific diplomatic channels on a more stronger grounds, and as well as help us growing in this particular science and research area as well. Now, in order to develop these grants, I just briefly touch upon for the researcher and young researcher that what they normally look in when we apply for such grants, what are the major areas which we need to take care of that when we apply and prepare a grant. So postdoctoral research experience is quite important for a candidate's profile. Candidate should be an independent researcher from his track record. Whenever he apply in a particular area, that should be reflected from his track record. They should have a strong research team for that, and they should have some personal attributes or a leadership attributes in order to conduct that research. So what makes a good research proposal? And obviously these are just a reiteration, everybody knows that. And this is a focus, it should be basically showing a focused objective, raise specific questions which should be relevant to the contemporary research, contemporary challenges, and also generate new knowledge, whether it's a basic or applied or both. So it's good to have both of them together working in this area. And they should apply a sound methodologies, and the number of institutions which are involved and different universities which are involved within a country or across the geographic boundaries. What is the basically credential of those partners are quite essential and vital. It's not something which you can get and find any partner and you do that. So there are a lot of thinking and rethinking needs to be done in this regard, according to the strengths of the partners as well. So the tricks of the trade, as I say, that we should all start with the modest time-wise and money-wise. I remember I started my first grant with 1 million rupees from the PSF, and that helped me to establish my credibility. And I established not only my laboratory, with that half of the grant was gone to that, and half of it was available for the research. So that's how I started my career. Now, luckily, HEC and PSF has basically increased that scope and increased that amount to a larger scale. at this moment in order to give the option and opportunities to the young researchers to grow. So we need to establish our credibility, establish collateral interactions, generate knowledge, basic or applied or both, and eventually go for a big project. Once you establish your credibility, and then it's a good time to go for a big program. It's a taxpayer money. We also be very conscious about using that money as well, because that's where the community comes in. That's where the compassion, empathy, integrity comes in. So we need to be very, very wary of this fact as well. So what are the suggested tips for the grant lottery process? As I said earlier, the scientific excellence is key in that regard. Research should be hypothesis driven, translational, synthetic systems, biology are not required. Some of the areas, I'll mention about a couple of example of those funding agency where they do not allow you to go into certain areas, so that discourage them. So what are the important topic and relevance to the funding agency is important. Preliminary data is vital, but it also has to be a preliminary. Use the opportunity to respond to the referees' comments, update and rebuttals. Choose reviewers carefully, and then cost the full amount. Skimping is a counterproductive. Saving time is counterproductive. Recycle and have contingencies. Form a strategic alliances, which is most important in grant reapplications and applications. Now, I'll just give you one example of a BBSRC, which funds research in basically plant area. And then that's where the areas which are not shown in here, the tools and also help in technology and tools development and underpinning biological research. That's major thrust. And they fund the research from the level of a molecules to the system biology, to the cellular level, to the tissue level, to the whole organism level, to the population level, and the larger landscapes as well. So what are their research priorities? Bioenergy. So you can look at that. What are the research projects that are mentioned in the basically a red highlight? Aging research, lifelong health and well-being, system biology, and so on and so forth, and animal health. But if we look at the grant review process, now we also should be aware of just giving you one of the example here, which we also need to take care of in our systems as well, where the panel of experts with the diverse expertise have been identified and put in the various programs, which are judging the grants of all sorts in nature, whether they are coming from a young investigators or the senior investigators, all reviewed together. So there I basically suggest from this platform that we should have encourage the young investigators and give them some sort of a seed funding, and they should be basically given a separate league in order to encourage them and bring them forward, so they can basically start at least their research and start translating their idea at a humble level, and then we should have a separate system for our senior investigators. And one of the way, and then those should be ranked in those categories accordingly. And one of the way that we should also try to introduce that there should be an international grant. One of the international grants should be, at least won by these researchers in their career in order to establish their credibility. That's something which we should encourage. We should have to look at those credibility points of all the research and see that how many of them are getting the research from the local and national funding agencies, and how many times they got, and how bigger research grants have they been obtained, and what was the outcome of that. And that should be basically correlated. That should have a database for that as well. So that should give an opportunity to the very productive research workers come forward and do their research effectively. So why the grants fail basically? So if they're not very exciting, not timely, not tackling a key issue or a challenge, not of high priority for BBSRC, for example, not clear benefit is mentioned there, not convincing, hypothesis is very flimsy, lack of rationale, and they do not have a track record of working that area, lack of the key pilot data, and then the high risk area. So this is an untested system. Entire work plan depends on a success of a first objective. So that's something which we need to see that carefully. And the key reagents are not available. Like in Pakistan, there have been always the issues that in terms of a supplies, in terms of this acquiring equipment timely. So I'll talk about that in my last slide, how this can be facilitated. So, and then finally the grants which are fatally flawed and are rare, but this is something. And then the Wellcome Trust is another major funding agency, which we hardly get any funding in that, where the general universities and medical universities can collaborate together in order to get such grants and apply together along with our international partners. And that's also a long-standing and increasing interest in international health, basically take care of that, increasing interest in research that is likely to make a difference to our human and animal health in short and medium term. So what does World Wellcome Trust do not like to see in a fellowship proposals? The panel, which will assess a person or a project in a place, basically will look at the personal qualities like potential to become an independent researcher. Does he have a reasonable degree in particular area? Does he have won any prizes or a publication, a good track record in that area? Commitment to an academic career with a clear path or a plan? Have a broad knowledge of the subject, awareness of a risk and limitation of the work which he is proposed, and awareness of ethical issues around the project. So this is something, this is more or less every single funding agency look, and I'm just giving you some of the example from the international funding agencies. And then the place or a partner is very important. Why I have chosen this institution as a department? Why, what the new skills this will bring to my career and my institution? What is the quality of a supervision and a mentorship involved in this? What is the track record of my supervisor and sponsor in this particular area? Who will be my collaborator, and are they appropriate ones or not for this project? So there has to be a clear mention of that, and then I'll just go to that, how that can be specifically done. If based overseas, who will be our overseas sponsors and supervisor in this regard? So I'll just give you one of the examples just to cover that, a European Union grant. So luckily I've been able to get a couple of these grants. That's why I'm mentioning these international funding opportunities to my listeners. So what European Union H2020 look, basically they look at the list of the participants, finding appropriate partners in the key area. So with the specific objectives and relevance of the research and innovation is another area. The scope of the call, fitting with the scope of the call is another area, and the methodological approaches and innovation which is bring down at the outcome of this research is another area. And then there are different work packages listing each and every partner's roles. If there are 7 partners, there should be 7 work packages, or even when one work packages, couple of partners can collaborate. And what is the overall impact or outcome of this research, and how the results will be implemented? So these are the key areas. Now we look at the work packages. They are further divided into different activity type. What is the participant name and how this participant is doing that activity? And then objectives, obviously, how there can be many objectives around those partners. And then the description of the work ranging from task 1 to several tasks. And then obviously the deliverables of the outcome. So this is how you prepare each and every work package in these international funding grants. And I've also given you one of the evaluation scheme of my grant, which basically was one of the successful European Union grant. And there are about 8 partners, right from Turkey was there, Cambridge was there, and many other countries, for European countries. Italy was the leading one, and I was from the ComSets from overseas country, Pakistan. So they have been given, evaluated us. One thing which you should be aware of the fact that it's not always about the money. It's always about when we talk about the science diplomacy, it's your credentials. Sometimes you build your credentials slowly and gradually, and people can have an eye keep on your profile, and then they try to link with you. And there are certain inherent problems in the transferring the funding in terms of money-wise, but there are the ways to facilitate you in various ways to promote the cause of the research in your country. And that's something which we have done in the European Union in terms of exchange of students, in terms of exchange of faculty, and developing and training those faculty members, and also getting these scientific materials in various ways or one way or the other way, and publishing together in applied areas as well. So this is how this funding was basically, this funding grant was rated in terms of a scoring. And this is how these funding, most of these funding applications are being rated from poor to excellent. So that's how this has been done. Now, how should you prepare your application? Leave plenty of time, as I said earlier. Choose the right supervisor. To sum up, read around the subject carefully, discuss with your supervisor carefully. That's the area where we lack in terms of a communication, in terms of timely acting, and that's the reason, because we are not aware of about the calls, and we are not aware of the strengths of the partners. We are not aware of doing this work properly and timely. And we also show that the proposal to the knowledgeable senior colleagues and collaborators. We lack in that as well. We do not normally consult our supervisor and just straight away do not give them enough time to read around and help us. So that's something which we need to work together. Do not leave the budget towards the last. That's one of the tradition which we normally do. Now, I can give you one of the extraordinary example of a donor collaboration. As I said, what we can learn from a country like Bangladesh. Now, Bangladesh is one of the institutions which is we call the ICDRB, one of the Daiger Research Institute, and its funding alone together is combined together is more than many universities of Pakistan because they've been able to capitalize on a lot of international funding agencies like the government is also supporting them. They have got the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funding. They have International Development Different Fund, UKID, Center of Disease Control Fund. They have US Aid Fund. They have a global fund fight against tuberculosis, AIDS, and so many other. National Institute of Health Fund from USA, Swedish International Grant. They have a Commission of European Communities. They have a Global Affairs Canada and Government of Canada Fund, and there are quite a few others as well. So you can imagine this is how the donor collaborations are working, and that's only possible when a lot of health researchers, basic researchers are working under one roof or under one umbrella, and that's basically helping them to attract so much funding and grants, and then that's where basically we can also work and develop such of a consortium between the universities in order to give them an opportunity. Now this is another way of showing that I've already discussed that, but this is how the partnerships and linkages are working in this particular donor collaboration to eventually in the larger benefit of a civil society, to be honest. So this is something which we need to work on that. Now, biotechnologies and society, this brings me to the last session of my talk. Now, if we look at the biotechnologies and its societal impact, it's a pyramid basically. If I see that there is a huge sector where agriculture, livestock, and industrial bioprocesses can be developed, and each and every component in this whole scheme, if you look at that, is a multi-billion industry. There have been a lot, as I've said earlier, BioNTech is a $19 billion industry. Earlier, it was a few $1 million industry. Similarly, monoclonal antibodies, therapeutics is a $1 billion industry. And we are basically, a lot of money is being spent on an import bill on different areas in this regard. And that's the area where basically we can do a lot of work. And one of the area where basically we can bring and attract our youth in this STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, health, together for the overall benefit of the society is basically bringing our cream towards biotechnologies, bringing our cream towards science, making science very interesting for them so that this is, along with the facts and figures, that this is the century of our biotechnologies, because we are not convinced. We keep on saying that, but we are not convinced and not been able to bring the best of our youth in this particular area because we are not convinced yet. So let's start convincing ourselves, and that's where we need to, on the right side, I've just shown you one of the examples with a small bacteria. That's where the problem where I see in this country that we have not been able to train our students at a college level so that they can do some sort of advanced work at the university level, and even at undergraduate level. I was teaching in a University of Glasgow many years ago as a demonstrated late 90s, and the kind of a technology or skills I was teaching to them was these one. The one which basically involved the cloning of the genes, how the genes work, how the proteins work, how you put that gene into the bacteria, and how the proteins bacteria act like a factory to produce the therapeutic molecules. So these are the ones which we train the students at a very later stage at the MS level or MPhil level in the universities, and that hardly not many, very many universities do impart those, demonstrate those technologies and give this practice or a hands-on training to the students at a university level even. So we need to that's why we are lacking 10 years, 20 years, 30 years in this science, as there was a recent article showing that Pakistan education system is about 60 years behind the rest of the world. So these are the areas which we need to work and give exposure to our students at early age to the science. And one way of doing that is basically telling that it's teaching them in a very interesting way about these skills. So I'll just give you a skip at, and for example, I can give you one example how these therapeutic molecules can be synthesized. It's a very simple way of doing that by bringing basically triggering interest in the youth, that how they can basically do that at a college or a university level, early university level, by putting these small segment of a gene in a bacteria and start harvesting these proteins which are of commercial value. So this is one way of doing that, is developing a jellyfish model, where we use that in my teaching career, in my previous organization where I served for about 20 years, and developed this model and using my the protein of which we call a green fluorescent protein, a novel protein which I identified 2005, and start using that. So this is what we normally teach, that how the proteins look like. And this is very difficult to replicate at a school or a college level because of a lack of this expensive equipment, expensive consumables. But what we can do, this is what we teach our graduate students, that this is how the protein look like, this is how basically the purified protein look like, and that's how basically it works and functions. But what we can do, now this is how we purify them, and all purification normally can be done using different techniques. But what we can do now, for the school teachers, for the school STEM teacher, for biotechnology teachers who are teaching biotechnology, or even at a college or a university level, develop our own toolkits. And this is what it looks like. How these bacteria glow by putting these proteins inside the bacteria, and just throwing a UV light, you can see that. That excites students. You can see different colors, different wavelengths of as per protein's properties. So this can be shown, and students can be excited that they have done that work. They have achieved something. They put a small segment of a gene in a bacteria, and that's where the biotechnology students can be excited, and a lot of things can be done later on in their career. So this is something at a college or early graduate level, the kind of a skills or a training they should have. And then their application, real life challenges. What sort of a case that this is also shown that one of the protein which we expressed in our protein, and there's a commercial protein as well, and they've been expressed in a mammalian cell line as well. And other things which we can do is basically show them that these proteins have the properties to act as a sensors. When you put them in a bacteria is a live sensor which can detect the pollutants in water, for example, pesticide, for example, toxic metals, which is a major challenge which we are facing in this country as well. And there are many other things can be sensed by using these live sensors with the bacteria, and along with other clone properties of the proteins can be exploited. So this is how basically it can be done easily to excite students along with the other sciences as well. Now, what we request, the institutional facilitation and the government support is required, as I earlier said, that in order to acquire these equipment, we need to have a very active approach in terms of investment-friendly policies. Tax incentives should be given in this particular area of acquiring these tools and equipment, and which we can help promoting the science. The lucrative grants and soft loans are also needs to be required. Duty-free import of a machinery, clean rooms, laboratory, cool chain accessories are required. Establishment of a venture capital fund for supporting biotech ventures is required. Technical staff, power issues, maintenance, common facilities, equal opportunities. These are the areas where the universities can work together in order to develop a conducive environment, an ecosystem for creating and co-creating together. So, and this is a common agenda. Everybody is facing these food security issues. We have these environmental issues. We need to work on these health issues as well. So these are the common interest areas where we need to work together. And the last slide is that how the policy priorities and education beyond borders can be taken care of. And I've just developed the education umbrella for sustainable development, for self-sustaining skill-based education RD ecosystem, where the individual health, population health, environment health, food, water, food, energy, and STEM education, along with the technology innovation, and that all together working for the sustainable communities and trained skillful youth with empathy, integrity, compassion, consciousness, and effective communication. So these are the areas where the general universities, technology universities, and medical universities work together in order to serve these communities. So with these words, thank you very much for listening to me. And if there are any other questions, I can be happy to answer that as well.
Thank you so much, sir, for the informative talk on the science diplomacy. biotechnology science society's impact and how to win the research grants. If anyone in the audience want to questions from the sir, just raise your hand. We will open your mic. डॉक्टर सलीम साहब, वाइस चांसलर मीर जाकिर खान यूनिवर्सिटी, सर आप अगर आप ऑनलाइन हैं इस वक्त, अगर सर से कोई क्वेश्चन पूछें। हाउस इस वक्त ओपन है, सर से कोई भी क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते हैं जस्ट अपना हैंड रेज करेंगे तो हम आपका माइक ओपन कर देंगे। सर चलिए मेरे ख्याल में कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है, तो सर एक छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है मेरा कि एज ए थर्ड वर्ल्ड कंट्री पाकिस्तान, जैसे मुख्तलिफ रिसोर्सेज पाकिस्तान के पास बड़े लिमिटेड से रिसोर्सेज हैं, तो HEC को जैसे हमारी वाइस चांसलर कॉन्फ्रेंस भी हो रही है, तो ऐसा कोई कंसोर्शियम बनाना चाहिए क्योंकि हमारे पास सबसे ज़्यादा यूथ हमारी यहाँ पे यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के अंदर अवेलेबल होती है। तो जैसे आप फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर मरी से आप जा रहे हैं साउथ पंजाब के अंदर KPK के अंदर अपने ट्रांसफ़र करने के लिए, या आपके अपर पंजाब से लोग जा रहे हैं, सिंध से लोग जा रहे हैं इन इफेक्टेड एरियाज़ के अंदर, तो क्यों ना हम उन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को के अंदर कोई ऐसे फाइनेंशियली उनको फंड्स ट्रांसफ़र कर दिए जाए और वो वहाँ पे लोकल लोगों की मोबिलाइजेशन भी की जाए और उन लोकल लोगों की जल्दी फर्स्ट प्रॉम्प्ट के ऊपर उनकी इमदाद भी की जा सकती है। तो इस रिलेटेड आप क्या क्या कह सकते हैं कि इस तरह के कंसोर्शियम्स की कोई ज़रूरत है कि यूनिवर्सिटीज़ अपने बिल्डअप करके रिलेटेड है कि हर एक इंडिविजुअल अपने फंड्स जाके ट्रांसफ़र करता है, वहाँ पे जाके इंडिविजुअल एफर्ट्स कर रहे होते हैं, इसके कंपैरेटिवली यूनिवर्सिटीज़ को अगर ये एफर्ट्स कर दी जाए कि हम अपने पैसे या जो भी आपके पास HEC का कोई फंड है और वो उन इफेक्टेड एरियाज़ की जो यूनिवर्सिटीज़ हैं उनको दे दिया जाए और उनके स्टूडेंट्स और उनकी फैकल्टी उन इफेक्टेड एरियाज के अंदर जाके अपना वो ट्रांसफर कर सकते।
डॉक्टर साहब आप बात कर रही हैं सिर्फ फ्लड अफेक्टेड जो फैक्ट्रीज है उनके हवाले से बात कर रहे हैं कि उनकी सपोर्ट कैसे की जाए या ओवरऑल एजुकेशन?
नहीं सर, फ्लड इफेक्ट्स के लिहाज से।
अच्छा ये देखिए इसमें कुछ यूनिवर्सिटीज हमारी कर भी है। कल डॉक्टर रुखसाना फरमा रही थी जो हमारी वुमेन यूनिवर्सिटी सियालकोट से जो वाइस चांसलर हैं, तो मसला ये है कि this is a testing time. Every university, every individual feels that he should chip in or contribute in one way or other way personally. That's the damage. वो कहते हैं जी आपका किसी एक जिस्म के हिस्से को नुकसान पहुंचे तो सारे आप समझे पूरी उम्मत जो है वो तड़प जाती है। तो वो टाइम है जब we everybody feels that they should chip in. But ideally yes, अगर आप ऐसा कोई सिस्टम बना लें जिसमें ये इतना इफेक्टिवली कंट्रीब्यूट हो सके और लोगों तक जो जरूरतमंद लोग हैं प्रायोरिटी वाइज उन तक ये चीजें पहुंच जाए तो बहुत अच्छी बात है। तो इससे तो बहुत सारा जो है एफर्ट्स जो है डुप्लीकेट होने से बच भी जाती हैं और रिसोर्सेज बच भी सकते हैं। But as I said, it's a satisfaction of the individuals how they are basically working and what is their mindset. So we can work individually, we can work in a team, and obviously universities platform can be exploited so that how we can basically be more cohesively work at this various aspects as well.
जी सर, थैंक यू सो मच सर। डॉक्टर सलीम साहब आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहते हैं?
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम। कैन यू हियर मी प्लीज?
जी सर।
हेलो
जी अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, आई कैन हियर यू जी।
अस्सलाम वालेकुम जी। दिस इज प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर मोहम्मद मनशा। दिस इज अ वेरी excellent talk about biotechnology usage, and I think that biotechnology as well as the computational technology can take this country to the highest level of progress and advancements. But my one basic question is that do we have any strategy to cover the power shortage or fluctuation of powers in the institutes, where if some equipment is available, we cannot run this equipment, and if it is run, even then it can broke immediately. We in the University of Education are facing this problem for the last 5 to 6 years, and we don't have any consistent supply of power. This is the main or basic requirement of every institute, and I think that now the Vice Chancellor Conference is coming in your honorable university. And I think this problem should be discussed at this level so that the researchers which are available here, they have innovative ideas, but even then they cannot utilize these equipments. Thank you, sir.
और बहुत शुक्रिया डॉक्टर साहब, आपने बड़ा सही सवाल रेज किया और ये हम सबको दिक्कत है। जब से हम यहाँ 20 साल से, मैं भी 22 साल से रिसर्च कर रहा हूँ, every other now and then there has been a breakdown in power and हमारे बहुत ही valuable जो consumables हैं, we end up losing them. So एक तो हमारा inherent problem वैसे ही power supplies का है, जो universities ने हम somehow आहिस्ता आहिस्ता अपने setups के जरिए से उनको strengthen करना शुरू कर दिया है. Now we are also moving, universities are also moving towards the solarization of their campuses as well, where they should be independent in terms of power capability, not only to protect their equipment from this power fluctuation and also to protect their valuable resources, consumable, their stocks. The work, the research they have been carrying out for decades and decades is not wasted. So वो सारी की सारी preserve करना is very essential component. But still we need to work on this area. Obviously आपने जिस तरह फरमाया, एक तो काम ये क्योंकि हम बहुत सारी चीजें import कर रहे होते हैं. So let's start working on एक बहुत ही basic चीजें which can be created and synthesized. Let's start our science right from there. In order to basically, मैंने शुरू में जिस तरह कहा, कॉलेज और यूनिवर्सिटीज के अंदर इतने फंड्स नहीं होते कि वो बच्चों को हैंड्स ऑन ट्रेनिंग एक्सपीरियंस दिखा सकें. तो why not to produce our own kits? Why not produce our own chemicals which can be easily done here? तो पहले तो ये रिसर्च और साइंस के प्रॉब्लम्स भी हमारे इसी तरह जनरेट होने चाहिए कि ये छोटा सा मीडिया मैंने बनाना है. What's wrong with that? There's recipes out there. एंड वी छोटा सा केमिकल और एक रिएजेंट हमने जो हम नॉर्मली यूज कर रहे होते हैं अपनी लेबोरेटरी में, टैग पॉलीमरेज फॉर एग्जांपल बनाना. वी आर नॉट ट्रस्टिंग ईच अदर, वी आर नॉट बेसिकली गिविंग अ चांस ईच अदर टू ग्रो, ताकि जब ये कई जिस तरह कोविड में हमने बहुत सारे बैन हो गए, बहुत सी चीजें आ ही नहीं सकी, तो आवर साइंस इज रिलाइंग ऑन द थिंग्स व्हिच हैव बीन इंपोर्टेड मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम फ्रॉम अब्रॉड. So let's move towards self-sufficiency first in terms of a small step. One small step would be enough to, take care of in 5 years, 10 years. And then obviously, inshallah, with the passage of time, but इनको नजर आने चाहिए वो small steps. और एनर्जी का ये क्राइसिस सारी जगहों पे बिल्कुल आपने बजा फरमाया. But this is something which the campuses can independently do and take care of their own businesses. But there's obviously will be discussed in education और research के उसके अंदर जरूर देखा जाएगा. और मैंने जिस तरह कहा सोलराइजेशन की तरफ जा रहे हैं, कैंपसेस को इनकरेज भी किया जा रहा है, तो ये बहुत जरूरी है जिसका आपने तवज्जो दिलाई जी, हमें बहुत शुक्रिया. होप आंसर योर क्वेश्चन. जी
जी सर, थैंक यू सो मच सर फॉर इंफॉर्मेटिव आंसर. डॉक्टर सलीम साहब, सर अगर आपको अनम्यूट किया हुआ है सर, आप अपना क्वेश्चन पूछना चाहें. सर आप अपने माइक को अनम्यूट करेंगे प्लीज, डॉक्टर सलीम सर. सर आप मुझे सुन रहे हैं डॉक्टर सलीम सर? जी वालेकुम सलाम सर.
क्या हाल है डॉक्टर साहब?
जी
मैं आपकी पार्शली टॉक सुनी है डॉक्टर साहब, और चूंकि मेरी और भी
अस्सलाम वालेकुम सर, क्या हाल है?
वालेकुम सलाम. तो माशाल्लाह बड़ी अच्छी थी. और अभी जो 2 आइडियाज़ आए हैं, एक तो ब्लड रिलीफ के हवाले से था और दूसरा इस हवाले से था कि जैसे आपने फरमाया कि हम छोटे छोटे प्रॉब्लम भी फ्लोट करें और हम अगर उनको म्यूचुअली सॉल्व कर सकें तो दैट कैन बी अ गुड बिगिनिंग एज वेल. तो अगर हम एक दूसरे के लिए सर्विसेज देने के लिए राज़ी हों तो ये अच्छा आइडिया है. फ्लड रिलीफ के हवाले से मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी चूँकि फ्लड अफेक्टेड एरिया में मौजूद है और मेजॉरिटी ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स उन बस्तियों और इलाकों से है जहाँ पे सैलाब से अफेक्ट हुए हैं और सीरियसली, उसका डाटा भी हमने कलेक्ट किया है. तो अगर कोई दोस्त इस यूनिवर्सिटियों के जो यहाँ उनकी हेल्प करना चाहें तो हमारी जो टीम है, हमारी एक सोसाइटी भी है इसके लिए, दे आर अवेलेबल टू फैसिलिटेट. तो उसमें हम के लिए
बहुत अच्छा. अगर वो डाटा आप डॉक्टर वकास के साथ सर शेयर कर लेना तो वी विल develop a policy of adopting a small town or a village तो वो हम देखते हैं हम अपनी कैपेसिटी से फिर आपके थ्रू उन एरिया में कैसे कर सकेंगे, तो हम शेयर भी कर लेंगे अपने लोगों के साथ, तो इंशाल्लाह विल कनेक्ट
जी
राइट पीपल विद यू, अगर वो डाटा शेयर हो जाए।
जी। दूसरा, मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी टेक्नोलॉजी यूनिवर्सिटी है, तो मेरा विजन तो ये है कि आने वाले दिनों में जितनी भी हमारे यूनिवर्सिटीज़ के जो लोग रिसर्च रिग्स बनवाते हैं, तो हम उनको रिग्स बना के दें,
रिग्स के तौर,
क्योंकि मेरे पास सारे डिसिप्लिन है, मैकेनिकल, इलेक्ट्रिकल, बड़ी अच्छी वर्कशॉप्स भी हैं, तो वो हम वो चीज़ों में काफ़ी आपकी हेल्प कर सकते हैं, जो लोग रिसर्च रिग बनवाना चाहें, और उसमें जो है ना वो हम मिलकर उसको वर्कआउट
ठीक हो गया। चलो, दैट्स अ गुड आइडिया। मैं शेयर थ्रू दिस प्लेटफॉर्म विद आवर कलीग्स एज वेल, आपका लिख भी देते हैं इसको, इंशाल्लाह उसके ऊपर डाल भी देंगे आपको।
तीसरा मैं कह रहा था कि ये जितने आपने फरमाया ना कि हम बहुत सारे केमिकल इंपोर्ट करते हैं, कभी वो अवेलेबल नहीं होते, और बहुत सारे जिनकी रेसिपी आउट है वो हम बना सकते हैं, तो हमारे जो केमिकल इंजीनियरिंग के पुराने इंस्टीट्यूट्स हैं, फॉर एग्जांपल इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ केमिकल इंजीनियरिंग पंजाब यूनिवर्सिटी 100 साल से ज़्यादा का है, वहाँ पे इतनी बड़ी अच्छी लैब्स और इतने पायलट प्लांट्स पड़े हुए हैं, जिनके ऊपर बैच स्केल पे 100 लीटर 200 लीटर या उससे कम में ये चीज़ें तैयार की जा सकती हैं, उनके पास एक्सपर्टीज भी हैं। तो अगर इफ़ वी जॉइन हैंड्स एंड वी हैव कॉमन प्रॉब्लम्स टू बी डेवलप्ड और सॉल्व, तो ये चीज़ें वक्त के साथ की जा सकती हैं विद कोलैबोरेशन।
ग्रेट, चलो ये दिस इज अ ग्रेट आइडिया जी। हमें पता सारे साइंटिस्ट को अब इसमें हर तरह के रिसर्चर्स मौजूद हैं, तो उनकी स्ट्रीम के जरिए से इनकी डिमांड लेके एक लिस्ट बनाते हैं, एंड देन वी प्रॉब्ली वर्क आउट कि व्हाट कैन बी सिंथेसाइज्ड, और उसमें फिर हम स्टार्ट करते हैं इंशाल्लाह इसको।
थैंक यू जी।
थैंक यू डॉक्टर साहब
जी। नेक्स्ट किसी और की तरफ से कोई क्वेश्चन हो तो प्लीज। सर थैंक यू सो मच फॉर योर इंफॉर्मेटिव टॉक। इंशाल्लाह कल दोबारा हमारा एक सेशन होगा परवेज अब्बासी साहब के साथ 11:30 पे, जो कि नेशनल इंक्यूबेशन सेंटर के हमारे डायरेक्टर हैं। तो कल इंशाल्लाह ज़रूर आप ज्वाइन कीजिएगा, आपके साथ उनके लिंक्स शेयर कर दिए जाएंगे। ओके सर, अल्लाह हाफिज़।